When we hear a news report, how can we trust what we're being told? Has the media become too caught up on selling reports rather than being factual and reliable? And specifically when reporting on Islam, can we go as far as to say that the Western media is actually biased against the religion? Join me for real stories, real issues, real views. This is Real Talk. Welcome to the show. I'm your host Ghalib Khan, and on today's Real Talk, we're discussing the media and its impact on society. Now, with more newspapers than ever, internet blogging, and also the birth of 24-hour news channels, we're going to be discussing what role this has on society today. How can we trust everything that we're being told, and is it totally accurate? Well, to answer these questions, we have an expert panel with us today. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Nasir Ahmed, who is chairman of MTA International Global Muslim Television Network. We have Robin Banerjee, former Director of Communications at the Commission for Racial Equality, and who also has vast experience on cross-governmental media. We've got Waqar Ahmadi, who's currently writing columns for regional press in the West Midlands. And finally, I'd like to introduce Gordon Radley, a radio and television presenter who's worked with such companies as ITV, BBC, and Sky News. Now, before we start discussing all the ins and outs, it'll be good to find out what people think about this topic out on the street. So let's take a listen to the word on the street.
Approximately 90% of all homes in the UK now have access to digital TV. And with almost 20 channels dedicated solely to news, there's no end of options if you want to keep abreast of current affairs. We live in a society where we demand instant information. We've become used to having the news at our fingertips from wherever it's happening in the world. But does this come at a price? Do we need to question whether this wealth of information is allowing us to form our own opinions? Or is it biased? And is the view we're getting of the world slightly twisted and distorted? From breaking news stories to daily summaries, the news broadcasters cover a huge range of topics. And with 65% of adults now claiming TV as their major source of news, is this public opinion being shaped by the personal opinion of a very small group of people? How do we separate fact from just an individual's views? And does the news consumer see this as a problem, or are they just willing to accept what they watch and form their opinions based on this? So today I'm going to find out what the public think about this, find out what impact the news has on them and how important they think it is when forming their opinions on today's society.
I think teenagers get a lot of bad press, people think of us as bad people, but we're not really, they stereotype us quite a lot because of what the news tells us.
So does any sort of news grab your attention, like exciting news, big explosions, big disasters?
If something big happens, like a tsunami or something, then I will listen to see what's going on, but then I just flick over after.
Okay. Do you think it's because it doesn't really, affect you very much, or it doesn't apply to you, or it's just not interesting?
It's just not interested.
Just not interested. Is it more important for you to have exciting news or accurate news?
It should be accurate news, but I think I don't want to speak for the rest of the country, or I'm not even really speaking for myself, but I suppose you can say that the more action that's in the news, the more people would watch it, really.
Yeah.
You have to look at it with, a lot of it is quite biased sometimes, but they want to tell us what they want us to think. But, I think on the whole, if you look at it with an open mind, you can basically pick out what's overblown and what isn't.
Well, we've heard a lot of interesting views from the video there, and let's take this straight to the panel. Nasir Ahmed, how do you think the media is influential in the society today?
I think in this day and age, the way the media is progressing insofar that we're able to see what is happening in every corner of the world instantly, it is playing a very important role in actually, I believe, in shaping the lives of people. I say so because It's the way the media portrays certain news, certain events, the political shapes around the globe, and that is what's educating people. And that education, I think, to some extent, becomes is based upon how a certain part of the media, the policy of that particular media is, and how they want to portray that. So I think it is playing a very influential and very detrimental role in shaping the world, partly as well.
Robin, what are your views? How important do you think the media has become?
Well, I think the media are very important in the sense that there are now so many sources of news, the internet, YouTube, blogs, 24-hour news channels, that the public rely on journalists, and particularly their trusted commentators, to interpret the news, to try and help them understand what's happening in a very complicated world with a very complicated agenda. So particularly politics, for example, they rely on the political commentators to try and explain what is happening in politics, or what's happening in terms of in particularly world politics, why people are doing certain things. So it's very, very important for those journalists to get their interpretation right and to try and present a balanced point of view.
Right, okay. Well, Carl, what's your views?
Yeah, extremely important for similar reasons shared by Nasir and Robin here. At the same time, I think the media has a very important role to play also in educating people as well. At the same time, we also see how the media impacts upon lifestyles, upon ways of thinking. It's very significant in terms of forming public opinion as well. As somebody that's also involved in education, every day I see in school the ways in which all types of media, whether it's newspapers, magazines, iPods, the internet, mobile phones, how they shape people's lives, and to some degree almost control them as well. From, for example, what their views might be about a particular country or religious people, to what hairstyle they should have for that day. It just plays a very important role, generally.
Gordon, would you agree with those?
I agree very much with what the panellists have said. I think your report at the beginning of the programme said 65% of people get their information from television news. Now, television news used to, 9 o'clock news used to deliver, something like 9,000 people. 9 million people, I should say. It's more like 9,000 now. Sky News, domestically, their Sunrise programme only delivers something like 300,000 people, but we're still talking about lots of people. But there is a huge range, as Robin was saying, chances of people getting their news from different sources. But the point I'd like to make is that although we seem to have so much choice now, that there are only a few big players in the medium, the likes of News Corp, Time Warner, Disney. So what's going on? We seem to have lots and lots of choice, but actually the big boys, there are very few of them running these multitude of outlets.
Right, so you're saying it's still only a few number of people who have the general influence over the wider media? There
are very few big players, and the big players control most of it. Although, perversely, there is a lot of choice when you go to the internet.
Right, okay, so why do you think that is the case at the moment? Why is the power still within such a small number of people?
Well, there used to be lots of independent sources of news. Those have boiled down for economic reasons. I mean, for instance, in this country, ITV used to be very, very powerful. Regional news was important. Because of lack of money now, regional news is getting less and less of it. The regional news programmes have amalgamated, and I suspect in time, regional and local news will only be available on the internet.
If you look at Volkswagen cars, they own Bugatti, they own Skoda, they own Seat. Very similar in the news industry as well. There are some very big players who have kept the different brand names for the bits that they've acquired, but they're controlled by an overarching, very large conglomerate or individual in some cases.